welcome to this week's edition of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable, in which we are almost 2 years into doing this. Thanks, Howie. Thanks, McMinnville Community Media, too. And we have with us today Mayor Linda Watkins from the City of Carlton. We've got Brett Nielsen on behalf of Sheridan School District. We have Howie Harkema from Encompass Yamhill Valley. We have Director Lindsey Manfrin from Yamhill County Health and Human Services. We have Mayor Rachel King from the City of Amity. Welcome. And I want to pass it over at this moment to Director Manfrin to give us a sense of what is going on with COVID in our community. And she may be able to help us understand masking, whether it's in or out, and all of that too. But before I turn it over to her, I want to say thank you to you and your team for helping all of us stay healthy. For those of us who have stayed healthy, thank you for all of your work on our behalf.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I know that I know my team really appreciates that too. So thank you for that. Yeah, well, maybe that's a good place to get started is with the mask mandate. So the press release went out from Oregon Health Authority yesterday, noting that on or before March 31st, the indoor mask mandate will be removed. And one thing to note, though, is that with the schools, that requirement will be in place until the 31st. So it could be that there's a brief period of time where in the general public, it is removed, but for schools, it is going to be until the 31st. Really, the indicator that they're looking for that may remove that mask mandate before the 31st, if to the general public, would be getting hospitalizations at or below 400. And so that's really what we're looking for. Right now, it's around 1,100. Of course, really, they're basing this information and the timeline on what projections are showing in terms of when we can anticipate seeing the number of cases and the number of hospitalizations drop. Certainly, we're seeing cases drop locally as well as statewide. We're not seeing them drop quite as rapidly as they went up, but they are dropping and pretty consistently week over week. We're seeing a couple hundred less cases each week. It have been for about 3 weeks, which is really great. So we're going to continue to track that. Hospitalizations seem to have sort of plateaued a little bit, and hopefully we'll be seeing those go down soon too. We typically see hospitalizations begin to decrease after we've already seen cases decrease. And in previous waves, we've seen the numbers of individuals who have passed away also sort of is the third lagging data indicator. It sort of comes in those waves. And so we're hoping that all of those things begin to happen sooner rather than later. A couple of things just to note with the mask mandates, once those are gone, there are still some recommendations around individuals who might want to consider continuing to mask, and largely those are individuals that are at higher risk for severe COVID illness because they have, they're immune compromised or have severe comorbidities that make them at higher risk. And so that would just be something that we would, let folks know that they could consider, even though it's not a requirement, right? People can still opt to do that should they elect to, and there might be some circumstances where people might want to choose that. Another important piece that is important for schools to be considering and thinking about right now is if once the mask mandate goes away on the 31st, if schools go forward without requiring masks, they are no longer eligible and able to do the test to stay in option for school. So right now, schools are able to continue to test both staff and students who have been exposed to COVID but are not showing symptoms. And as long as they test negative, they are able to stay in school. Part of the requirement for the Test to Stay program is universal masking. So at this point, the state OHA has indicated that once that requirement for masks is gone, then the Test to Stay program would not be able to do that. The school wouldn't be able to do that as well. So just something to be thinking about and keeping in mind. Locally, what we're really trying to think about is what that impact might be in terms of student absences and even staff absences. So we'll just, we're not making any sort of formal recommendation on what schools should or shouldn't do. We're just really trying to help them think through what that might look like for them so that they can make informed choices that they feel like is best for their schools. A couple of other things outside of the mask mandate. We are hopeful that sooner rather than later we'll be able to see more of the antiviral medications available, not only just locally within Yamhill County, which they're the oral ones, meaning the pill you swallow, are not locally, but also just statewide. They continue to be very limited, and even those sites, the dozen or so sites around the state that do have access to them are getting roughly 20 doses per 2 weeks. So it's extremely limited. So we're hoping that supply chain opens up, and then we'll have another kind of tool, if you will, in our toolbox to be able to help those that are most at risk for severe outcomes. And we are, I will say, also working on getting some of that access available locally as well. The vaccine updates, we continue to see evidence that the vaccine, specifically the vaccine booster, really is, having a strong impact on making sure people, keeping people out of the hospital. So that's an important piece to note. Another vaccine update is likely the week of the 21st or 22nd. That week, we anticipate the Pfizer vaccine for 6 months to 4 years old will be available in Oregon. So they're going through that process right now. It's been, authorized by the FDA. It's going through the CDC process, and then Oregon has that extra step of its own review panelists from the Western States Pact that has healthcare providers and scientists throughout the West Coast that come together and review the data one more time before making a recommendation. And assuming that all of those steps are met, we anticipate locally that vaccine will be available that week of the 21st. Of course, I'm being cautious. The 21st is a holiday, so a lot of places might be closed. So that's why I keep toggling between the 21st and the 22nd. When we're thinking about vaccinating that group, certainly people within public health are well equipped and have been doing vaccines for babies and young ones for a long time, as we have our immunization clinic for just the general childhood vaccines. And we also recognize that some of the strategies around, drive-through clinics and things are just not going to work when we're talking about little ones back in their car seats, and not only from a logistics standpoint, but also just from a care standpoint, and thinking about the sensitivity you need to have when we're working with the littlest of the little ones. So we are likely not going to be doing them at those sort of bigger events that we have, but we will be able to have scheduled appointments within our clinic for people to schedule and come in. There'll be more information available on our website as we fine tune that and get that ready. And then we're also really hoping that our healthcare providers and partners will be able to provide that in their offices as well, which can often be the best place for the little ones to get those. So the best thing to do is in the coming weeks, if that's something that someone is interested in getting for their family, their kids, to check our website and check in with their healthcare provider and see what their plans are. And as we understand what our healthcare providers are doing, we can help get that information on our website as well, so that people have a consistent place to go. We have received some of our rapid tests. We've received a little over half of our order of the state supply tests. We have and also ordered some of our own, and those have arrived. We've been working really closely with a number of community partners, places like Unidos and Housing and YCAP and a number of places to get those deployed. We've also been working closely with our cities to get those into the hands of some of the critical infrastructure workforces that we've needed to make sure that we we maintain. So those are going out. If you are an organization that works with a population of people that may have an increased challenge of getting access to testing, please feel free to reach out to me and we can work with you. And as long as we have the supply, I'm happy to try to get some tests that you can then deploy out to that group of people that, especially again, if they're experiencing challenges to getting tested themselves. So we're hoping that this will be a nice way to get more testing easily available to folks in our community. We also have a pretty significant supply of masks, if anyone is wanting one. You know, it's still, we'll see what happens. You know, we've still got at least another, you know, almost 2 months of wearing masks. So if folks are interested in getting things like N95s or surgical masks, we certainly have those. Certainly, you know, if people are opting to continue to wear masks, we will continue to provide supply as best as we can, as long as we have it. I think those are all of my updates, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Director. Are there any questions? There were a lot of things there. Howie.
Yeah. Lindsey, you talked about medically fragile and such, maybe continuing to wear the masks. What about senior citizens? I'm 68 years old. I've been wearing a mask for over 2 years. I've been boosted. I've had all my shots. But I'm always worried about the challenge of meeting up with somebody and getting COVID after all of this and not getting COVID. So,
yeah, it's a great question, Howie. And you know, I'll say there's a couple of things that play into it, right? I think everyone has their own sort of level or threshold of risk they're willing to take. So, you know, kind of thinking about that. I think that the overall OHA recommendation is for those that are over 65 to consider wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And I think you could take that even a step further and say, you know, maybe there might be some situations where you feel more comfortable wearing a mask and others that you wouldn't. So rather than thinking of it, you know, completely globally or universally, there just might be certain times or places that you'd be considering it or not. So I don't think it's a one size fits all for sure, but I think that there's all of those like different pieces would come into play in terms of making the decision. But we do know that being over 65 just in and of itself is a higher risk factor.
Well, I probably will continue to wear my mask. The only drawback to that is the challenge of the unvaxxed that's out there coming at you and saying, why are you wearing a mask?
Exactly.
Thank you.
That is a problem, Howie. I thought you were going to say you're bounteous.
Well, that too, yeah.
Brent, and then Mayor.
So a quick question I have, and I may have my time frames wrong here, so forgive me if that's the case. But it feels like last fall when the state eased up on the requirements, there was a real, you know, all of a sudden there was a hiccup where you know, things went backwards real fast. Is there any concern about that, or has there been any thought given to that?
I think yes. I think there's a number of things being taken into consideration. And I think you're right. I think last year, what we all experienced was, well, at least I can speak for myself, right? There was this sort of sigh of relief when we had this brief moment where it felt like things were coming under control. And then we hit the Delta wave. And I think that there was a number of things that were kind of colliding all at the same time. One was we had this variant that was more contagious happening at the same time that vaccine was waning, as we were learning how long that vaccination set, you know, we're learning more that yes, indeed, it did begin to wane. And it was around that time. So there was a number of things at play that I think led to you know, what we now call the Delta wave. I think certainly there's no 100% guarantee with anything, right? And so there could be another variant, there could be something like that. And we also know that between the number of people who are vaccinated and boosted and the number of people who have experienced COVID illness, that hopefully all of those things taken into consideration will mean that we won't have such significant spikes, or that it will just be a little bit more seasonal like we see with the flu. I think that's overall the hope, right? We can't make any guarantees or promises, as we've all learned. There's no crystal ball that's been working during this time, but I do think that is the hope. And then we have to just kind of monitor. And I think a lot of folks are really thinking about and wanting to consider using the hospitalization status as more of the indicator that would change any sort of public health practices. I want to be cautious when I say that, because I think that I do agree that is a really good point, because that's what we're really wanting to make sure we don't overwhelm our hospitals, right? And we've been very close and have done that in some cases over the course of this event. And so that really is the critical indicator. And we don't want to just totally discount the number of cases, because we know that those things tend to go hand in hand. And so until we see a moment in time of where the number of cases is not at all a predictor of hospitalizations, which we're currently seeing, we still do have to pay attention to the overall number. But I think over time, the hope is that it will be more like what we see in terms of flu.
Awesome. Good question, Brent. I think that's on the minds of lots of people is, will we see something new, or are we in a new place?
Yeah.
And I believe both mayors unmuted themselves.
I was just going to tell Howie to smart ass, just tell him that, by golly, I'm old and I didn't get this age by being stupid.
I was about to mute you, so I was like, hey, I have the power to mute if something really offensive comes out. Awesome. Mayor King, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I did. It was just a question. So I had seen a comment online, and it was actually from Forum Rare Cape, and it had to do with the mask mandate lifting, and that the mandate might still be in place for federal transit, such as school buses and public transit. So I didn't know if Director Manfrin or you, possibly Commissioner, knew anything about that.
I can say anything that's a federal guideline isn't going to be impacted by OHA's mandate. So anything that falls under the federal transportation or the airline, like those types of things will remain. So it would be only anything specific to Oregon. The question about the school buses, I don't know. In my mind, I was looping them in with the schools, but we would have to follow up to be certain. But my sense is that that's more of a state than federal, but we would need to check, because again, all the federal requirements, unless they're changed at the federal level, won't be impacted by this. The other piece that I will mention too is that the healthcare provider and healthcare setting mask rules are separate from the general mask rules, and they're totally different rules in the way that Oregon has written them. And so at this point, what OHA has indicated is that the healthcare providers and healthcare settings, the mask mandates will remain in those facilities.
I was just really thinking with the busing, that might be something that we or I should figure out, because I know a lot of parents or students are celebrating, the mask is gone. And so if we're going to come back with information about on the bus at all times, it would be good to push that information at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the OHA and ODE are working together right now to hopefully get guidance out as soon as possible that will hopefully clarify any of those nuances or details.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mayor, for asking that question. I did want to note, welcome, Wendy Belize. We haven't seen you since there was a bill that was passed that requires your company to go all renewable in a certain time frame.
It's Clean Energy House Bill 2021. Yes. No, happy to be back. I had this ongoing Tuesday meeting, but today we had the gift of time, and I went, I get to join my Yamhill County friends. Loved that my other meeting was shortened significantly. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Well, are there other questions for Director Manfrin? All right, well, thank you so much for that very thorough update. And I'm going to pass it off then to Mayor King from the City of Amity for any updates for the community and for the folks here.
Yes, thank you. We have been pretty busy here in Amity, and then we skipped a couple weeks of Roundtable between all of us. So we held our town hall, which was very successful in my eyes. We had about 10 people in the audience, which was a record breaker, and citizens were able to bring up some concerns or questions. A lot of times I had to be like, I don't have an answer, but I'll get back to you. But just like I said, hearing those questions and concerns is so important. Council also did their yearly goal setting. And so I feel like that was really productive. And last year we were able to hit 16 of our 24 goals, which was amazing. But this year we pared it down a bit. So a smaller amount of goals, but maybe more impactful and long-term, less like, in the 3 to 5 year range, so we can really focus our energy. I think that will be good. And then in other council news, we actually accepted 2 resignations at last week's meeting. But at the same time, we appointed 3 new councilors. So I'm happy to announce for the first time since, honestly, before I was appointed mayor, we have a full council, which I'm very happy to be working with. Yeah, so those are the updates I have.
And how is your bridge, the Salt Creek Bridge, going?
The Salt Creek Bridge is going well. ODOT got their bids in. I'm not sure of the exact place they are right now, but plans are underway. And so we're still able to say it's on track in spring of this year. And Amity is doing the last minute shuffle of paperwork and all that, but I'm happy to say that we also have our aspect well in order to line up.
Awesome, super exciting. All right, well, if there are any other questions for Mayor King. All right, Mayor Watkins. Oh.
Really quickly, I wanted to thank Wendy. So Amity, I have mentioned it before, had a long going, we're looking for problem-solving solutions because our water treatment plant is on a different power grid than the rest of the city. And so between Mike and I, we've engaged with PGE, and Wendy's been super helpful over the last year. And just today we had a meeting. They had a whole team of engineers and planners came out and found a solution to help us stabilize the power to Amity's water treatment plant. And so we just sent out a thank you letter, but I just want to sing her praises because they've all been instrumental in Amity being like, we don't know how to fix this, but we need help. And they came to our rescue and have been great partners.
So awesome.
Thank you, Mayor King. Thank you. Thank you for the partnership.
And if y'all will recall, the city of Amity had power before during the ice storm almost a year ago now, before their water treatment plant. And so it'll be so huge, right? Awesome. Howie, you had raised your hand.
I was just going to put a thumbs up to that for Mayor King. That's awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you, PG. Thanks, Mayor King. All right, then I'm going to go on to Mayor Watkins, and I'm sure you have some praise for PG too while you're at it.
We always have praise for PGE. They're great for us. It's just a good relationship, I think. And as far as I know, I've never heard anything other than yay. So
thank you, Mayor.
Well, Mayor Watkins, what would you like to share with the community today and with us here on the call?
Can you hear me at all?
Now
Can
we
you hear
can.
me? Okay, I could see Casey. I could see your mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear anything. No, and you weren't muted. So someday that's what I need to get fixed is my internet. Anyway, as with Amity, we are starting this weekend. We will be doing our goal setting and getting ready for that. We've also pretty well the ODOT and the Highway 47 realignment has reactivated, and we're working on activating, number one, clarifying obviously with ODOT who's doing what and how things are going to be handled, but also one of the things that we did because we felt that we needed to have a little bit more local contact with ODOT was we had appointed an ad hoc committee that will be working or be meeting with the team, I think, periodically, or working to keep the citizens updated on what's going on. And so we're getting those guys reactivated. One of the wonderful kind of serendipity things that happened was that ODOT has contracted with an agency to do their public outreach. Ironically, it's the same agency that we had already contracted with to help us with our update of our comprehensive plan and our building codes and city codes. So this makes a really nice combination and a really nice dovetail between everything, and I think will help make it a little bit easier to get the communication with ODOT that we need on that, because a lot of people are very concerned about speed and safety, and those are the two main concerns. So and I think that, yeah, I'm going to stop right there. And did want to thank Mayor King for schlepping on up to Carlton the other day so we could have lunch and share stories. Yeah, it's nice networking, and we wouldn't have ever probably been able to do that if it hadn't been for this. So thank you for the roundtable.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Watkins. I enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, it was nice. So that's
Awesome.
it.
Well, are there comments or questions for Mayor? All right. Well, Mayor, thank you very much. And we'll keep talking. And I will say, Mayor, that the next tour or series of tours that I'll be corralling in the congressional leadership on is around things like Highway 47 going through your town, Highway 99 going through Amity. So we can stand there and wait for people to stop for us. That could be one of the object lessons, right?
I'm looking so forward to that, Commissioner.
Yeah, we had an ODOT tour and they got to see some of the trucks going through, and it was good to have them there and actually seeing what we're dealing with. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mayor. I am going to move on then to Howie Harkema, Encompass Yamhill Valley. What would you like to share with people today?
Well, thank you, Commissioner Kula. Encompass Yamhill Valley has been really busy this winter with coordination of all the warming shelters across Yamhill County. And thus far, we have done 661 shelterings in Newburgh and McMinnville. That added to the cooling centers from last summer when we desperately needed them. We have sheltered 983 people to keep them safe over those time frames during the cooling and the winter sheltering so far. That's an amazing number of people. And then the Safe Overnight Car Camping Program moves forward. We just graduated 2 people at one of our slots. They both got housing. So we're very happy for them that they were able to transition out of sleeping in their vehicles into actually having a place to stay. And Sunday Sandwiches continues at the library every Sunday from 1 to 3. And we are reaching out to community partners also to see if we can find permanent money to keep that piece of the puzzle going, because there was no food availability for our houseless and those in need on Sundays. And we would like to continue that forevermore, as you can well imagine. The last piece is gas vouchers. We give out anywhere from $500 to $800 worth of $5 gas vouchers per month, and that is through the YCCO. And we implement all of that. Now there is a question about if we're going to up that, because now Virginia Garcia would like for their patients that are needing gas vouchers to be able to allow them to do that as well. And all of these things come through Encompass to make sure that those that are in need have the resources and the ability to get the resources that they need. A couple of grants have come through, so we are totally set up, and there's a big one coming up, Measure 110 funding for HHS, which we are applying for, of course, the funding for that as well. And so that falls into Director Manfrin's pile of work, and we're very hopeful. So that is my report for today. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Are there questions? We have a question from Ron Hayes, who's watching, which is how much is needed, Howie, for continuing the Sunday sandwich?
Yes, the amount of money is very small. It's $560 for 2 months. So it's not very expensive to feed all of our people that are out there, and we have the manpower and the volunteers to do such. It's just, it can't keep coming out of Encompass only money. We've asked Provoking Hope. We're going to go to First Federal and apply for a $5,000 grant. We're going to talk to YCAP and a number of other nonprofits that are partners with us to see if we can't find the funding for a year at a time. So that's where we're at. $560 for 2 months.
And it looked like Mayor Watkins unmuted.
Yes, I did. Howie, if an individual wanted to donate to the sandwich program, how would they do it?
Well, they can either write a check and send it to our post office box, which is 1634 in McMinnville, or they can go online and I believe on Facebook, on our Encompass Yamhill Valley page, we have a donation set up so that you can do either PayPal or direct out of a debit card or such. So, and we also have a website now. It's encompassyv.org.
Okay.
And
Great.
so you can donate through that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Howie, for that update. And then I'm going to go to Wendy Belize. What would you like to share with us, either about PGE and their work in our area at the state level? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think what is interesting, it is a gorgeous day in my little town of Aurora, and hoping that I see a little bit of sunlight coming through, and Mayor King and Mayor Watkins and Commissioner Kulas. But a year ago, it was mentioned, we were in the midst of a pretty unprecedented storm. And I think what I want to share with everybody today is PGE has done a tremendous amount of work after that storm, a lot of lessons learned, and we've invested heavily in our systems. We had, but we continue to. And one of the areas that of particular interest was vegetation management. A lot of trees came down. That ice is was pretty heavy, and a lot of trees came down. And one of the wonderful things of information, and I'm really grateful that Mayor Watkins and Mayor King are on here, is we've received a lot of questions around right trees, having the right trees, because people want trees, they just want to make sure it's the right tree. And Amity and Carlton have been both at the forefront and have asked us for information around right tree. And so our kind of theme is right tree, right place. So we're very supportive. Let's get the right tree and have it planted in the right place so that it doesn't have the type of impact it had in last year's storm. So I would offer that up to any community that would like more information, and be happy to talk to Mayor King or Mayor Watkins as well, because they've been at the forefront. There's some, in fact, I believe there was a tree ordinance, Mayor Watkins, that your council was recently completed some work around that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we're discussing that. I think that's going to be one of the part of the goal setting too. So yeah, thank you.
So that's one aspect of it. So again, offer that information. The other piece, and that is work that I'm undergoing right now, is we recognize that there are water and wastewater facilities are critical facilities, and those have been we've worked really hard to identify all of those so that in any event, those are going to be highlighted. I think what I'm going to be reaching out to many of you, your city managers and other city staff, is though there's another layer, and that's really, and I tried to go through my notes, but I'm really going to be looking for information at which systems do not have any source of backup, because we have them identified, but now we need to know, do they have backup? Because if they do, then, and I'll certainly want to learn, like, what does the backup look like? You know, is it a 6 hour, 8 hour? And so those are the kinds of information that we're collecting and we're inputting into our system so that we're fully aware of, one, what your critical facilities are, and two, whether or not they have a backup. And that's going to be a part of continued work, but I just wanted to highlight that, because if you hear from me or your city managers hear from me, it's because I'm collecting that data. And so I just wanted to highlight that. I also wanted to thank all of you again. It's been a year, knock on wood, it's February, and in March, but knock on wood, hopefully we won't have that this year. I just want to thank all of you, Commissioner Kula, and all of the mayors and leaders that are on this call and on listening. Thank you so much for the continued collaboration and partnership. We're only as good as the information that you share with us and the partnership you have in raising concerns. And I just want to express that today. Along with, I hope you get outside and get some sunny weather, and a plug for Brooks Winery outside of Amity, because I was there a couple of weekends ago.
And they're always about the fog. Well, thank you, Wendy. Are there questions or comments for Wendy?
I just want to say it again for the crowd, because I told her this earlier. I've had the opportunity to speak to many PGE employees over the last couple months, like even randomly just calling up, hey, I have a question, who can you connect me with? And I have seen nothing but kindness, patience, and willingness to answer questions and track down answers to even the simplest, silliest questions from Mayor King. So thanks again. And I just want to let everyone know, do not be afraid to reach out. Wendy is so helpful.
100% agree on that one. All right, well, thank you, Wendy. And from here on the island, thank you so much too. When the trucks came, 50, or I guess we're at 49 weeks ago, everybody on the island celebrated. So thank you very much. I will note that a lot of folks who are heavily engaged in the legislative process. We were all in the middle of session and doing commissioner work and mayoral work. And it was so challenging to have this expectation that all of life was going to go on while you had the largest mobilization in history of line workers. And we were all with, there were so many of us that were without power, internet, all that. So
Thank
it
you.
was a challenge for everybody.
It was a challenge for everybody. Yes. And I think you identified the folks that really take such pride in being out there, and that is our linemen. They work through incredible elements. And you're right, I had never in the history of my career at PGE, it's unprecedented the number of crews, both PGE, but out of state. I mean, all the way from Canada, for goodness sakes. We had crew, and we couldn't find a location large enough. We were able, at the time, silver lining of COVID, Temecula Community College was not, and we were able to lease out all of their parking lot area for the number of sheer crews that came in from all over the place. But I really appreciate you sharing that, and I will pass it along. Our linemen just take so much pride in serving our customers, and when they hear these kind of feedback, it just makes our day. I'm gonna pass it along.
Awesome, thank you. And Brent, I want to check in. Is there anything you'd like to share with on behalf of CTEC West, hopefully, and the Sheridan School District?
Well, let me share a little bit of stuff that may not be precisely on topic, but I think it's still worth sharing. So we're in the middle of networking with folks, networking with the community, making sure that we contact all the folks who are kind of cheerleaders for what we're doing. And one of the questions that I get sometimes, and I suppose I won't get it from this group because I think this group is pretty in tune to what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I'll hear from people who will say, well, why does this CTEC thing matter? And I think it's good for us all to think about. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the idea of red threads. Well, a red thread is it's a way of describing the things that really excite us as we're working through our day. What are those things where we lose ourselves in it, where it's just something that we're so passionate about doing? And that's referred to as a red thread. And the idea is if you can collect as many red threads as possible in your day, that's what helps you avoid burnout. That's what helps you stay passionate about your work and do a great job in it. And one of the tragedies that we find is the education system does a very poor job teaching kids how to find red threads and teaching kids about the importance of red threads. And many kids, we find the way they learn is not classroom learning. That's where CTEC really sings, because it's that working with your hands. It's a different type of learning, but it's a way of getting kids engaged. And so I think, I like to reinforce that as much as I can, that setting up opportunities for kids to learn in non-traditional ways is so important. And it's part of what, frankly, what gives me the passion behind this project, because I think it's very, very important.
I think Mayor Watkins was going to add something.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of follow up on that comment. One of the programs that I learned about and brought back to our city council and our city, and that we're actually going to be working on this year, is a joint project between Willamette Workforce Partnership and SEDCOR, the student trade I don't know how to describe it, learning a trade instead of graduating, kids that are not on the college track, that don't want to be on the college track. And between those two organizations, working to work with the trade unions to help these kids get some experience and get a job. And we're slowly putting together a project for this summer to get some new sidewalks in Carlton. And it's coming through Willamette Workforce Partnership and SEDCOR to do exactly that, so that these kids will walk away with a trade and tools and experience. And it's nice to see that and to know that we're able to help do something like that, and not, you were saying that some kids just are not comfortable learning in a classroom. I know my learning is more experiential. I prefer experience rather than classroom theology. So yeah, it's a great thing. And we're really excited to see this happen, but it's come out of that kind of a philosophy of, allowing other things to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right, Brent. I think you're right. Well, I will say that I hope too that with the future, like doing a little pivot to the legislature, the Future Ready Oregon bill, I hope that either Workforce Partnership or SEDCOR or the school district can direct money either to get the program going or for some of the operational costs. And Wendy is nodding because she knows all about it too.
So can I answer Mayor King's question here? So you asked the timeline to be running to have students participating. Our goal is to have, and I want to say goal in big quotations because everyone on this call knows that goals can slip. But the target that we are really shooting for is to have 2 strands up and running by next school year. There's a lot of ground to cover between now and then. And so, that, we're going to have to get a lot of people behind us and really pushing for it. But I think we can get there. I think there's some real energy behind it. And I'm not saying specifically what those strands are yet, because that may be that, we're targeting specific strands, but to say what those 2 are, let's just leave it vague for now. But yeah, we want to have at least 2 strands up and running by next school year.
That's awesome. I know you guys have had the ball rolling quickly on this, so, but even that's surprising to me. So I'm really hopeful you're able to get that by next year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Put a plug in though, Mayor, that it will take all of us either seeking out or supporting or championing,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's we're knocking on doors for people to introduce us to people we don't know yet. So because it's more than just it can't be 10 people. It can't just be 20 people. It's going to take as many people involved in this thing as we can. So even if you're not immediately involved, if there's someone who who thinks could contribute to, if you could just pass us their names, that would be incredibly valuable.
And at this point is when you and Wendy Valise exchange contact information.
Yes.
And Brent, do you anticipate there being any pre-apprenticeship programs as part of one of those threads?
So there's a lot of different things we're working on. So our goal is to have the threads all be things that you can get some sort of certificate in, so that as you complete that thread, you have some workforce, something you can put in. Some of the things, so one of the big ones we're working on is diesel mechanics and automotive, body shop, some of that stuff. Some of those things you can't get licensing before you're 18 years old. And so there's some limits on what we can specifically do. But that is one of the values of this kind of program, is that kids can graduate from a program and go directly into a workforce.
Howie, did you want to add something?
I do. I want to ask Brent a question. With our outsourcing of machining and welding and all of the other manufacturing that we used to do here in America, we have lost a lot of apprenticeship programs. I just wondered if there was some thought towards those types of programs as well.
Howie, that's a great question, and actually it hits real close to the heart. My family used to have a manufacturing business in Salem, and so you're absolutely on point. What we're doing with the CTEC program, because it's a school district program, it's not strictly apprenticeship, because typically apprenticeship is more working with a future employer to further that education. I think absolutely, as we work with our industry partners, we're going to encourage a model like that. I've seen outcomes where, Salem CTEC, at one point they were saying, let's have practice interviews. And the industry partners took a step back from that and said, well, why are we bothering making this practice? Let's just interview these kids for jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that's making the learning real like that is one of the things that makes it valuable to students. So absolutely. I think that's something we need to figure out how it fits in. I don't know exactly where the jigsaw fits. But
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing it up.
Absolutely. And thank you for allowing me to be here. That it's even just soaking in the juices here is worthwhile.
And for reals, Brent and Wendy.
Yes, yeah, we'll connect.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that sounds great.
Thank you.
And I'll keep an ear out for how the Future Ready Oregon bill could or could not direct more funding to CTEC.
Yeah, that would be great.
Mayor King?
Because I was reading up on that bill right before this meeting, and when it says 92.5 million to existing programs, is that the type of programs it's talking about?
There are some weird, let me just call them arts of phrase arts, or ways of phrasing things. Because we've bought a new building and we're setting up new programs, there's some question, do we qualify as a strictly existing program or not? And so, there's a lot of lines to be walked. I think there's absolutely a place for us in that legislation. It's just figuring out where we fit precisely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Mayor King, like the Willamette Workforce Partnership, for example, we fund multiple programs that do job training for high school students. And so and it's supposed to be an accelerated, the money is supposed to get out the door 30 days after passage or signing down, or after the end of session. So that money will go into existing programs that have the ability to then expand. Whether that can then translate to probably realistically a contract with the school district is, the next thing to talk about.
Because that's what I'm imagining. You do kind of have these funneling of monies, and as a portion of this is going to be from the ARPA funds, it kind of has that trickle down effect where you just have to plug yourself in where you're going to eligibly fit.
Well, and that's the trick that I'm sure all of you know, is there's all of these little pockets of money, and it's saying, okay, well, I can draw on this little pocket here and I can draw on that little pocket there, and it's just knowing which pockets to pull out of.
Well, I apologize that I have to close us down at 2:00. So we have just a few minutes from there. I will note, I made a very quick, hey, there's some bills in the legislature. There's a childcare kind of legislative concept that's being worked on right now. There's a broadband bill. There's the giant workforce bill with supports to apprentices and other programs. So I will try to keep you all posted and I'll send some information out on them. So that's what I can do right now in our limited time.
If you can find any more information on how it will help the healthcare field, I know that was one of 3 that was highlighted in that Future Ready Oregon bill. I think that would be a good place for us to know more about too.
For sure. My understanding is that there's there will be more slots for covering the cost of CNA training, and then also for covering the cost of nursing programs, and then trying to develop apprenticeship tracks so that people don't have to go through a schooling model if they can earn as they're learning. And then there's actually there's a significant amount, I think the 92 million can also go to covering the cost of childcare for people who are in the programs as well, which it feels like a huge thing, right? Because it's not just people who don't have kids who might be younger, but it's people who are like, hey, I need a new career. My the work is done here, and I have kids, and there's no way for me to do the learning because I don't have childcare.
Well, or oftentimes it's people who are young and who have had kids and, so there's a lot of.
Well, the childcare is one of those barriers that's like elephant in the room. We ask people, well, why aren't you doing this? And it's like, if you don't have the resources to have the ability to do it, you can't ask that of someone. So I think that's great that that's just part of this solution.
Absolutely. When the Oregon Employment Department did a survey recently of folks who are still unemployed, the top reason why they had not jumped into a job was because of childcare. And then the next one, interestingly, was taking care of somebody, which are, lack of childcare, but also taking care as the next big one. So more to come. Well, so as for me to not be late, I want to thank all of you. It's very good to see you. Thank you for your work in the community. And remember to wear a mask for a little while longer and get vaccinated if you haven't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. See you next week.